This episode is brought to you by Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Shadows, available March 20th. I'm Kerry Stagmer, and we are the Blacksmiths of Baltimore Knife and Sword. We're going to be building some of your favorite things and fantastic objects you've never seen before. This is Man-at-Arms, Reforged. We've partnered with Ubisoft again for another awesome and highly anticipated entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise. In the first episode, we made Naoe's Kusurigama, and now it's time to make Yasuke's katana and wakizashi. As Yasuke, players will feel the power of a samurai warrior. As all typical samurai from feudal Japan, his signature weapons include a katana and a wakizashi. Whether the player uses the katana or the many other weapons available for Yasuke, combat will feel visceral. The katana is the iconic weapon of this time period, so it was very important to us to use traditional techniques in the making of this piece, so as to respect the tradition of sword making in Japan in this period. Katana are generally 2 shaku to 3 shaku in length, and the wakizashi are 1 shaku to 2 shaku long. But Yasuke is a giant man, so his katana is much longer and heavier than 3 shaku. It's basically a regular katana scaled up in dimensions. For this piece, we're going to work with actual tamahagane that we purchased from a source in Japan. Matt and Gary will start by processing this material in our charcoal forge so as to transform it from raw form into its workable metal. When starting with any kind of bloom steel, you have to consolidate it down into a workable bar, because as you get the material, it is very spongy almost and quite porous, so it has to be consolidated down to become solid. When we work in the traditional charcoal forge on a sword like this, we usually end up using around 500 pounds of charcoal. It's consumed very quickly, but gives us a very, very clean heat and helps us with our pattern welding.
At this point, we want to get it like almost sparking yellow. If I see carbon sparks coming out of the fire, I know that's hot enough to do what we need to do. And we want that color to be even. So we're forging the whole thing at the same temperature. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the wafers that we flattened previously, and I'm checking them for carbon content, and then I'm stacking them in layers on this plate, so that once we put it in the forge, we'll weld it all together and get a solid piece out of it.
Matt's now stacking these forged tiles as close as he can get. He's trying to keep as many gaps out as possible to make the piece weld better. We then spray it down and pack it in clay. The clay that we're doing is really just to keep oxygen away from the piece, and the cloth is to keep it consolidated together. You might see us do normal pattern welding where we just take a MIG welder and we weld the plates together. We don't want to do that with precious material like this, because we want it to be as pure as possible and not have any modern material added to it.
Both of our protagonists have katanas in the game. Naoi has a regular size katana that she used in a reverse grip. And then we have Yasuke's katana, which we wanted to make different, just to make sure that both have their own diverging styles. And for Yasuke, it made sense for us to just scale up the katana to fit his size. So with his katana in hand, his katana is to scale with what his body proportions are, but his katana is much bigger than any other you will see in the game, and that creates a very intimidating figure for Yasuke as well.
With each blow of the hammer, this material begins to consolidate. You'll see a lot of things coming off of it, but much of that is just either sparks or impurities in the material. We do save everything that comes off and check and see if it's something that we can add back into the billet later. But as it consolidates and becomes a bar, it really takes a lot of time. So I think what we'll do is we'll wander off and see what Lauren's working on in the shop.
I'm going to saw the edges and the heart on the detail that goes on the saya. We're going to start by drilling a hole.
So Yasuke being our primary combatant dedicated for the game and being the biggest character we've ever had as a protagonist, we knew we wanted to have him showcase both his brute strength, but also his precision and training as a samurai in our story. So on the one side, if you use the kanabo, the big club, you can generate a lot of damage and create a lot of mayhem with it, because it's a brute force tool that you need strength to swing around. But when he uses the katana, although it's a bigger katana than your typical katana, it's very precise, very quick and agile, and it respects what you expect from a katana. It's not just a great sword that he swings like a brute. He has very precise strikes that he can perform with the katana.
Even though this bar looks like it's fairly clean steel, there really is a lot of surface in it that needs to still be compressed and forge welded. We're going to do that by cutting this piece in half and folding it over on itself a few more times. As we do that, it will continue to refine the steel over and over again until we can reach the material that we long for from this plume.
Kerry has given me the Suba fresh off the laser. I'm going to cut out the negative spaces with the saw, the same way we did with copper. I'm going to do it with steel, so we will see how it works.
Having drawn this bar out into a blade, Now we begin to refine its form, starting first by cutting the tip and forging it into shape. Now that the material for the sword is separated for the two, the katana and wakizashi, but we'll begin to separate the forging as well, with Matt staying on the katana as Gari forges the wakizashi.
So when we start forging out the blades, we don't want to start from just a square bar, a straight bar. What we're going to make is we're going to make what the Japanese call a sonobe, which is a preform. So what it is a rectangular shape, or a rectangular sword shape, that is tapered in all directions. So it's tapered in width, it's tapered in thickness, but it's still a rectangular bar. But with the tapers establishing the blade and the tang. That's kind of our blueprint. That allows us to know how long the sword is going to be, so we're not wasting material. We're not using more material than we need to make the length of the sword that we want. At that point, we start beveling the sword, which means we're hammering from the ridge line down. Once we start forging in the bevels, we're going to be creating the actual cross-section of the sword, which is almost diamond-shaped. So as we start putting the bevels in, it's going to stretch the blade edge more than the back edge. So what we do at that point is we start beveling on this side, and then we'll also bevel this from the ridge line up, and that'll bend it downward. But by hammering on that edge, it's going to stretch the material, and the sword is going to curve back. So then that will make us the bar will start turning into a blade shape. It'll become wider, it'll curve a bit more, and then take on that iconic shape of the katana.
Now that Matt's made my job inordinately easier by hammering in this beautiful bevel, I'm gonna rough grind it and get it ready for heat treating.
I'm applying clay to the blade. Right now I'm doing a real thin layer of clay where I'm gonna want the hamon to be. So I'm kind of almost laying out the pattern of the hamon. This time we're doing what they call a choji hamon, which is a clove blossom hamon. And then we'll apply lines across it made out of clay that are ashi lines, which bring soft material down into the hamon, and then a thicker clay along the upper sides.
We've chosen a glass quench tank so that we can watch these as we heat treat them. As they go into the water, they will first dip down forward and then come back and give us the bend or sorry that we require for these finished blades. Absolutely fascinating thing to watch, and gives us a good indication of how the form will be at the very end.
Okay, so we've got the short sword pretty much in finished polish here. They're not quite done, but the sizes are certainly really good. So at this point, we want to start actually creating both the handle and the scabbard for this. So we're going to outline this and then probably extend out a little bit, trying to make sure I get the grain nice and straight. This is a piece of maple, so it's got real smooth grain in it.
Using the very controlled heat of the induction forge, Matt's going to heat up this copper so that it can be both worked hot and it can be quenched. When you quench copper, it is the reverse of steel. As you quench it into water, it gets extremely soft and allows you to work it cold. Underneath the silk of these handles, we'll be wrapping with rayskin. This rayskin is what we would consider a raw rayskin. Unlike something that's tanned and soft and supple, this has to be heated in water so that we can then stretch it over the piece. That will give a non-slip surface that you can both feel with your fingers and will hold the silk in place. We've made a lot of katanas on the show over the years, but every time we do, it's never any less special. While all based in science, there's truly something magical in the process that turns black sand into beautiful pieces of art like this katana and wakizashi. I don't think I'll ever not enjoy seeing the finished products we make here in the shop and the joy on people's faces as they behold these beautiful pieces. Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out the previous episode if you haven't already and see Nawe's Kusurigama. And make sure to click the link below in the description to check out the official trailer for the game.